In this video, I'll show you how to easily propagate Fittonia so you've pretty much got an endless supply. Let's get straight into the video, starting with what materials you'll need. The first and most important thing that you'll need is a Fittonia plant that you can take some cuttings from. You can take cuttings from a potted plant like this one, or even a terrarium that needs a slight trim back. If you haven't got a plant you can take cuttings from, Fittonia is widely available in shops and online. The next thing you'll need is some small pots to propagate the cuttings. I like to use these 5.5cm square pots, but these round ones work just as well. Next, you'll need some substrate to grow the cuttings in. I'm going to use my Terrarium substrate mix, which is made up of these components up on screen now. A good alternative is some houseplant potting mix, which is quite easy to get hold of online or in stores. Next, you'll need a tub with a lid to place all the pots inside. This will help maintain a high humidity that the Fittonia thrive in. If you're just planning on propagating a couple plants, you can even use some small smoothie tubs. I've done this plenty of times before and it does work really well. The last thing that you'll need is some egg crate light diffuser. I'll leave some links to these materials in the description below. I'm going to start by removing the lid and placing the egg crate at the bottom of the tub. I've got a bunch of old pieces and off cuttings which might not look the best, but they'll still serve the same function. This will elevate the pots and allow water to drain right through the substrate. Next, I'm going to take the square pots and place them inside the tub. This tub fits 24 of these square pots perfectly. The next step is to fill each and every pot with substrate. I'm gently compressing the soil and making sure not to fill the pots right to the top, as that just makes planting more difficult. With all the pots filled up, it's time to start taking some cuttings. To take the cuttings, it really is as simple as taking some scissors and snipping away. As I mentioned at the start, you can take cuttings from a plant that you've bought in the store or from a terrarium that needs a slight trim back. This is my praying mantis terrarium and it's got some Fittonia that can do with some cutting back. Despite the top being cut off, the Fittonia left inside the terrarium will grow new, healthy stems in no time at all. I bought a few pots of Fittonia like this one and planted them in this tub, which is where I take most of my cuttings from. This is quite handy as they take up less space and I can place on a lid to maintain higher humidity. Now I've got a bunch of cuttings, it's time to start propagating them. I'm using a wooden skewer to poke a hole in the centre of the pot. I'm now going to take a cutting and plant it into the hole up to the first set of leaves. Next, I'm using my fingers to gently compress the soil around the stem, and then this plant is good to go. This cutting has got a really short stem, so I'm going to pull off the bottom leaves so that I can plant it a bit deeper. I've found that having a longer stem into the substrate helps with the success rate of the cuttings. That's all the pots planted up and the tub is really looking quite colourful. For the small cuttings, I've planted 2 stems into a single pot to better utilise the space inside the tub. Now it's time to give them some water. As the substrate was already relatively damp, I really don't need to add much whatsoever. Ideally, the substrate should be damp to the touch but not soaking wet. The lid can now go back on and I'm going to place the tub under an LED light where it receives 12 hours of light a day. If you don't want to use additional lighting, you can place the tub in a bright spot in indirect sunlight and still get good results. As for care, I'll open up the tub every week to give it some fresh air and also check on the plants. When propagating this many plants, it's completely normal for 1 or 2 not to make it. If a cutting does seem to be dying, I'll pull it out and replace it with a new one. I'll also use this time to check the soil and make sure that it's not drying out. Due to the lid being on the tub, the substrate holds moisture really well and rarely needs to be watered, but it's always good to double check. Here's a couple pots that I propagated about a month or so ago which are ready to be used. For this one, I'm going to take some cuttings and propagate them again to get another pot of Fittonia. The plant that I've taken these cuttings from has developed a healthy root system, so it'll be able to regrow these stems in no time at all. For this plant, I'm going to remove it from the pot completely, break away all the soil, and now it's ready to be planted into a terrarium. It's great to see that it's grown such a healthy root system, and I'm sure it's going to thrive in whatever setup I put it in. I hope you found this video useful and decide to start propagating some Fittonia yourself. Check out this video here to learn how to propagate one of the most popular terrarium plants, oak leaf creeping fig.